The waiting room was cold, and the leather chairs made small creaking sounds every time someone shifted their weight. Lily sat perfectly still, her fingers nervously touching the raised dots on the papers in her lap. These weren't ordinary papers. They were her music sheets written in Braille, the special alphabet that blind people read with their fingertips. She had been waiting for almost 2 hours now. Her guide dog, a golden retriever named Harmony, rested quietly at her feet. Every few minutes, Lily could hear another student being called into the grand rehearsal hall. Each time the door opened, beautiful piano music would drift out for just a moment before the heavy door closed again. This was the biggest day of her life. She was 17 years old, and she had traveled over 800 miles to be here at the Thornfield Music Academy. The academy was famous, the kind of place where future concert pianists trained. Today she was going to play for Antonio Valdez, a pianist whose name everyone knew. He had performed in the greatest concert halls around the world. His recordings had won awards. People paid hundreds of dollars just to hear him play. When the assistant finally called her name, Lily's heart started racing. She stood up, and Harmony immediately got to her feet, ready to guide her. They walked together toward the rehearsal hall, Lily's white cane tapping softly against the polished marble floor. The door opened, and Lily felt the change in the air immediately. The rehearsal hall was enormous. She could tell by the way sounds echoed, by the coolness of the space, by the faint smell of wood polish and old books. Somewhere ahead of her she could hear papers rustling and someone clearing their throat impatiently. "Come in," a voice said. The accent was thick, maybe Italian or Spanish. This had to be Antonio Valdez himself. Harmony led Lily toward the center of the room. She could sense other people there too. Probably other students waiting for their turn. Nobody said anything. The silence felt heavy, uncomfortable. "So you are the next student," Valdez said. Then there was a pause. A long pause. "I see. My assistant did not inform me about your situation." Lily felt her cheeks grow warm. She knew what he meant. He was surprised that she was blind. Or maybe disappointed. She had heard that tone before, many times. "I can play, sir," she said quietly, trying to keep her voice steady. "I've prepared something special for today." "I'm sure you have," Valdez replied, but his voice didn't sound encouraging. It sounded tired, maybe even annoyed. "However, I must be honest with you, young lady. Classical piano at this level is extremely demanding. It requires reading complex musical scores, watching your hand positions carefully, understanding visual cues from conductors. These are things that require sight." Lily gripped her Braille sheets tighter. She had expected this, but it still hurt to hear it said out loud. "I've learned to read music in Braille, sir," she explained. "And I've memorized the piece I want to play. Every single note." Someone in the room laughed quietly. It was a mocking sound, barely hidden. Lily felt her face burn with embarrassment. "Memorization is admirable," Valdez continued, "but it's not enough. Not at this level. Tell me, what piece did you prepare?" Lily took a breath. "Rachmaninoff's Piano Concerto No. 2, the first movement." The room went completely silent. Then Valdez laughed. "It wasn't a kind laugh, that piece," he said, and now there was definite mockery in his voice. "My dear girl, that is one of the most technically difficult pieces in the entire piano repertoire. Professional pianists with decades of experience struggle with it. You expect me to believe that you, a blind teenager, can perform it? I can, sir, if you'll let me try." "This is not a charity event," Valdez said sharply. "This masterclass is for serious musicians who have a realistic chance at professional careers. Perhaps you would be better suited for something more appropriate. Music therapy, perhaps? I hear there are excellent programs for people with disabilities who want to remain involved in music." Each word felt like a slap. Lily had heard variations of this speech before. Well-meaning teachers who suggested she try something easier, something more suitable, something that didn't require what they thought she couldn't do. But she had never expected to hear it from someone like Antonio Valdez. She had thought he, of all people, would understand that music wasn't about eyes. It was about heart, about soul, about the connection between a person and the instrument. "I came here to play," Lily said, and this time her voice was stronger. "I traveled 800 miles. I practiced 12 hours a day for 6 months. I'm not asking for charity. I'm asking for 3 minutes of your time. 3 minutes to show you what I can do." She heard Valdez sigh heavily. Papers rustled again. 3 minutes, he said finally. Then we move on to students who have a genuine future in classical music. The words stung, but Lily nodded. 3 minutes. That was all she needed. That was all she would get. Harmony led her to the piano. Lily ran her hand along the smooth edge until she found the bench. She sat down, adjusted her position, and placed her hands on the keys. They felt cool under her fingers, familiar, like greeting an old friend. Behind her, she could hear Valdez settling into his chair. She heard the click of his expensive watch, probably checking the time. 3 minutes starting now. But before she played, Lily let her mind drift back for just a moment. She thought about her father, who had stayed up late countless nights helping her learn to read Braille music. She thought about her mother, who had driven her to lessons even when money was tight. She thought about all the teachers who had turned her away, all the competitions that had rejected her application, all the people who had suggested she give up. She thought about the day she went blind. She had been 8 years old. It happened slowly over the course of a year. First, colors became harder to see. Then faces became blurry. Then the sheet music she loved started to fade until it was just gray shadows on white paper. The doctors said it was a rare condition. They said they were sorry. They said she would need to adjust to a new way of living. But her father had said something different. He had said music doesn't live in your eyes. It lives in your heart and in your hands. He had promised her that losing her sight didn't mean losing her music. And he had been right. All of that had led to this moment. 3 minutes with Antonio Valdez. 3 minutes to prove that she belonged in this world of concert halls and grand pianos and beautiful, complicated music. Lily placed her fingers on the opening keys of Rachmaninoff's Piano Concerto No. 2. She took a deep breath. The room was so quiet she could hear people breathing. Then she began to play. The first chords rang out, soft and haunting, exactly the way Rachmaninoff had written them over 100 years ago. But there was something in the way Lily played them, something that made them sound different. Not just notes on a page, not just sounds produced by hammers striking strings. These were emotions translated into music, feelings given voice through ivory keys and wooden soundboards. Her 3 minutes had begun. The music filled every corner of the rehearsal hall. Lily's fingers moved across the keys with a confidence that surprised even her. She had practiced this piece thousands of times, but playing it here in front of Antonio Valdez felt completely different. Every note mattered. Every pause, every dynamic change, every subtle shift in tempo carried weight. She wasn't just playing music. She was telling a story. Rachmaninoff had poured his heart into this concerto, and now Lily was sharing that emotion with everyone in the room. Her body swayed slightly with the melody, feeling the rhythm in her bones, in her chest, in the very air around her. Behind her, she could no longer hear the impatient tapping of Valdez's foot. The room had gone completely still except for the sound of the piano. 3 minutes passed, then 4, then 5. Lily kept playing. Nobody stopped her. When she finally struck the last chord of the opening section, she let it ring out, sustaining the pedal until the sound faded into silence. Only then did she lift her hands from the keys. Her heart was pounding. Her palms felt sweaty. She waited for someone to say something, anything. Then she heard it. Slow, deliberate clapping. Antonio Valdez was applauding. Within seconds, others joined in. The applause grew louder, filling the hall with a sound that was almost as beautiful as the music itself. "Remarkable," Valdez said, and his voice sounded completely different now. The mockery was gone. The impatience had vanished. "In 40 years of teaching, I have never heard that piece played with such feeling. You don't just play the notes, young lady. You understand them. You feel them." Lily felt tears prickling at the corners of her eyes, but she blinked them back. She wasn't going to cry, not here. Not now. But as she sat there at the piano, catching her breath, her mind drifted back to how she had gotten here. It hadn't been easy. Nothing about her journey had been easy. She thought about the year she turned 8. That was when everything changed. It started with small things. She would squint at the chalkboard at school. Colors seemed less bright. Her mother noticed first and took her to the doctor. Then another doctor. Then specialists at the big hospital in the city. The diagnosis was devastating. A rare degenerative condition. Her optic nerves were slowly failing. There was no cure, no treatment. Within a year, maybe 2, she would be completely blind. The doctors were gentle when they explained it, but their gentleness somehow made it worse. Lily remembered crying for days. She remembered being angry at the world, at fate, at whatever cosmic force had decided this would happen to her. She loved reading books. She loved watching her favorite shows. She loved seeing her parents' faces, her friends at school, the flowers in the garden, and she loved seeing sheet music, those neat black notes marching across white pages, telling her exactly what to play on the piano. Her father was a music teacher, and he had been teaching her piano since she was 4 years old. Music was everything to her. How could she play piano if she couldn't see the notes? But her father had an answer. One evening, he sat down with her at the kitchen table. He held her small hands in his large, calloused ones. "Lily," he said gently, "I need you to listen to me very carefully. Music doesn't live in your eyes. It lives here." He placed her hand over her heart. "And here." He touched her ears. "And here." He guided her hands to the table, letting her feel the solid wood beneath her palms. "But I won't be able to read music," she had protested, her voice choked with tears. "You'll learn a different way to read," he promised.
"There's something called Braille."
"It's an alphabet made of raised dots that you can feel with your fingers. People use it to read books, and you can use it to read music too." Lily hadn't believed him at first. It seemed impossible. But her father was patient. As her sight slowly faded over the next year, he helped her transition. He bought Braille books. He connected her with teachers who understood how to work with blind students. He sat with her for hours, helping her learn to read those patterns of dots. Her mother was equally supportive, though in different ways. She spent countless evenings transcribing sheet music into Braille, dot by painstaking dot. Each piece of music took hours to translate. Lily knew her mother's fingers ached from the work, but she never complained. At school, things were harder. Some kids were kind, but others weren't. They called her names. They said she was weird. Some teachers didn't know how to help her, and seemed frustrated when they had to make special arrangements. Lily felt like a burden, like she was taking up too much space, requiring too much attention. But at the piano, she felt free. There, she wasn't the blind girl. She was just a musician. Her fingers knew where to go. She could feel the difference between the white keys and the black keys. She could hear when a note was right or wrong. She could sense the vibrations of the strings through the piano bench. Her father taught her something crucial. He taught her to listen more carefully than she ever had before. Without sight, her other senses became sharper. She could hear tiny variations in tone that other people missed. She could feel the subtle vibrations that indicated whether she was using the right amount of pressure on the keys. "You're developing something special," her father told her when she was 12. "You're not just hearing music. You're feeling it in ways that sighted pianists often miss. They rely on their eyes too much. You're learning to trust your ears and your heart." But even with her father's encouragement, the road was full of obstacles. She applied to participate in local competitions, and many rejected her application outright. They said it wasn't fair to the other students. They said she needed special accommodations they couldn't provide. They said a lot of things that all meant the same thing. She didn't belong. One teacher told her mother, right in front of Lily, that it was cruel to let her pursue classical piano professionally. "She'll only be disappointed," the teacher said. "Be realistic. A blind concert pianist? It's just not possible." Lily remembered how angry that comment had made her. Not possible, why not? She could play just as well as any sighted student. Better than many. But people couldn't see past her white cane and her guide dog. They saw her disability before they heard her music. There were dark moments. Times when she wanted to give up. Times when the rejection felt like too much to bear. She was 14 when she told her father she didn't want to play piano anymore. What was the point if nobody would give her a chance? Her father had hugged her tight that day. "I understand," he said. "This isn't fair, and I'm sorry you have to fight so hard for something you're naturally gifted at. But Lily, I've heard you play. I've seen how your face lights up when you're at the piano. That joy, that connection to the music, that's real. Don't let other people's limited imagination steal that from you." His words stayed with her. The joy was real. The connection to music was real. So she kept going. She practiced harder than ever. 12, sometimes 14 hours a day. Her fingers developed calluses. Her back ached from sitting at the bench. But she improved. She grew stronger, more confident, more skilled. When she heard about the masterclass with Antonio Valdez, she almost didn't apply. She knew how he would react. She knew what happened when famous musicians encountered a blind student. But something made her send in the application anyway. Maybe it was hope. Maybe it was stubbornness. Maybe it was just that she was tired of hiding. Now sitting at this piano, hearing Valdez praise her playing, Lily felt something shift inside her. This was why she had kept going. This moment, this recognition, this proof that she belonged here. Antonio Valdez walked closer to the piano. Lily could hear his footsteps, slow and deliberate against the polished floor. She sat perfectly still, her hands resting in her lap, waiting to hear what he would say next. "I owe you an apology," Valdez said quietly. His voice was right beside her now. "I have been teaching for 4 decades. I have trained students who now perform in the finest concert halls in the world. But today you have taught me something that I should have learned long ago." Lily turned her head toward his voice, not quite sure she had heard him correctly. "Music is not about reading dots on a page," Valdez continued. "It is not about perfect hand position or following a conductor's baton. Those are tools, yes, but they are not the heart of music. You have reminded me of what I forgot somewhere along the way. Music is about feeling, about connection, about the human soul speaking through sound." There was emotion in his voice that Lily hadn't expected. This man, this famous pianist who had dismissed her just minutes ago, sounded almost moved. "I would like to work with you," Valdez said. "If you will accept me as your mentor, I will do everything in my power to help you reach your full potential. And I believe your potential is extraordinary." Lily felt her breath catch in her throat. A mentor? Antonio Valdez wanted to be her mentor? This was beyond anything she had imagined. She had only hoped to play for him, to show him she was serious. She never dreamed he would offer to teach her. "Yes," she managed to say. "Yes, I would be honored." "Good," Valdez said, and she could hear the smile in his voice. "Then we begin immediately. Everyone else, this masterclass is dismissed for today. Clear the room, please." There were surprised murmurs from the other students. Chairs scraped against the floor as people gathered their things and left. Within minutes, the rehearsal hall was empty except for Lily, Valdez, and Harmony, who still rested quietly near the piano. What followed was the most intense 3 hours of musical instruction Lily had ever experienced. Valdez worked with her on technique, on interpretation, on the subtle shadings that separated good playing from truly great playing. But what surprised her most was how he adapted his teaching style. Instead of showing her hand positions, he described them in detail. Instead of demonstrating visually, he had her feel the vibrations and listen to the quality of sound. He asked her questions about what she heard, what she felt, how the music made her think and feel. "You have an advantage," he told her at one point. "Most pianists, they watch their hands too much. They rely on their eyes and forget to truly listen. You cannot do this. You must listen with complete attention. This makes you in some ways more connected to the music than sighted pianists." It was the first time anyone had suggested that her blindness might actually help her music rather than hinder it. The idea was revolutionary to Lily. As the weeks turned into months, Valdez became more than just a teacher. He became an advocate. He started making phone calls to competition organizers, to concert hall managers, to anyone who might give Lily a chance to perform. "They tell me it's complicated," he would say, frustrated after another rejection. "They say they don't have the proper accommodations. They say the other competitors might object." Excuses, all of it. They are afraid of something different, something that challenges their narrow view of what a pianist should be. But Valdez didn't give up. He was relentless, and slowly doors began to open. First, a small regional competition agreed to let Lily participate. She won second place. Then a larger state competition. She won first place. Each victory made the next opportunity a little easier to secure. People started talking about her, not just in local music circles, but nationally. Articles appeared in music magazines. "The blind pianist who's changing classical music," one headline read. Another said, "Breaking barriers. How one young musician is redefining what's possible." But not everyone was supportive. Some critics were harsh. One wrote, "While Miss Chen's performances are admirable considering her disability, we must maintain the rigorous standards that define excellence in classical music. Making exceptions, no matter how well-intentioned, ultimately diminishes the art form." That review had stung badly. Lily remembered sitting in her apartment, having her mother read it to her over the phone. She had cried afterward, feeling like no matter what she did, some people would never see her as a real pianist. They would always see her as the blind girl trying to play piano. They're wrong, Valdez had told her when she showed up to her next lesson with red eyes. They're afraid. You threaten their comfortable worldview. They have spent their whole careers believing that classical music requires certain things, certain abilities. You prove them wrong simply by existing, by playing beautifully. That frightens them. But what if they're right? Lily had asked. What if I am just an inspirational story and not a real artist? Valdez had been quiet for a moment. Then he said something she would never forget. Let me tell you about the first time I heard you play. When you walked into that rehearsal hall with your guide dog, I was annoyed. I was prejudiced. I thought you would waste my time. I thought classical music at the highest level was impossible for someone without sight. He paused and Lily heard him move closer. Then you played, and within 30 seconds I forgot you were blind. I forgot everything except the music. It was so beautiful, so technically perfect, so emotionally rich that nothing else mattered. That is not an inspirational story. That is artistry. True artistry. His words helped, but Lily knew she needed to prove herself at the highest level possible. She needed a stage so big, a competition so prestigious that nobody could dismiss her achievement. That's when Valdez suggested the International Tchaikovsky Competition. It was one of the most respected piano competitions in the world. Held in Moscow every 4 years, it attracted the best young pianists from every country. Winners of the Tchaikovsky competition went on to have major international careers. It will be the hardest thing you have ever done, Valdez warned. The pieces are announced only a few weeks before the competition. You will need to memorize hours and hours of music in multiple styles. The judges are notoriously difficult, and there will be people who do not want you to win no matter how well you play. I want to try, Lily said without hesitation. I know you do, Valdez replied, and I believe you can win. But we must prepare you properly. The competition is in 6 months. Starting tomorrow, we will work harder than you have ever worked before. He wasn't exaggerating. The preparation was brutal. Lily practiced 12 to 14 hours every single day. Her fingers ached. Her back hurt from sitting at the piano bench. Her brain felt overloaded with notes and rhythms and interpretations. Valdez pushed her relentlessly. He made her play pieces at different tempos and different styles with different emotional approaches. He wanted her ready for anything the competition might throw at her. You must be twice as good as the other competitors, he explained. Not because you are blind, but because some judges will look for any excuse to mark you down. They will say you missed something, that you weren't quite perfect enough. So you must be undeniably, absolutely, impossibly good. There were days when Lily wanted to quit, days when her fingers wouldn't cooperate, when the music felt lifeless, when she wondered if she was fooling herself. But then she would remember that moment in the rehearsal hall. She would remember the applause. She would remember Valdez telling her she was an artist, not just an inspirational story. And she would go back to the piano and practice some more, because this competition wasn't just about winning. It was about proving to the world that blind musicians belonged on the greatest stages. It was about opening doors for other disabled artists who would come after her. 6 months flew by faster than Lily could have imagined. Before she knew it, she was on a plane to Moscow, Harmony at her feet, Valdez in the seat beside her. The International Tchaikovsky competition awaited, and with it, the chance to change everything. Moscow in June was cooler than Lily had expected. She could feel the breeze on her face as Valdez guided her from the taxi to the hotel. The city hummed with energy around her. Car horns, voices speaking rapid Russian, the distant sound of music from street performers. Everything felt foreign and exciting and terrifying all at once. Tomorrow we go to the concert hall for your first rehearsal, Valdez said as they rode the elevator up to their floor. You will have 2 hours with the piano to familiarize yourself with the instrument and the acoustics. Use that time wisely. Lily nodded, her stomach twisting with nerves. She had been preparing for this moment for 6 months, but now that she was actually here, doubt crept in. 48 pianists from 23 countries. All of them talented, all of them hungry for victory. And she was the only blind competitor. That night she barely slept. She kept running through the pieces in her mind, her fingers twitching slightly as if playing invisible keys. Beside her bed, Harmony slept peacefully, undisturbed by her anxiety. The next morning, the concert hall took her breath away. She couldn't see it, but she could feel it. The space was massive. When Valdez walked her onto the stage, her footsteps echoed in a way that told her there were hundreds, maybe thousands of seats rising up into the darkness. The piano is a Steinway, Valdez told her, guiding her hand to the instrument. 9-foot concert grand. The action is perfectly balanced. The tone is warm but clear. It's a beautiful instrument. Lily sat down and placed her hands on the keys. She played a few scales, listening carefully. Valdez was right. The piano was magnificent, and the acoustics of the hall were perfect. Every note rang out clearly, with just enough reverb to make the sound rich and full. She spent those 2 hours exploring every aspect of the piano and the hall. She memorized the feel of the bench, the exact distance from where she sat to where the pedals were. She learned how hard to press the keys to get the sound she wanted. She figured out how the acoustics changed depending on how she played. The first round of the competition began 2 days later. Lily was scheduled to perform in the afternoon. The morning was torture. She tried to eat breakfast but couldn't manage more than a few bites. Her hands felt shaky. Her heart wouldn't stop racing. This is normal, Valdez assured her. Every musician feels this way before a major performance. The nervousness means you care. Use it. Channel it into your playing. When her time came, Lily walked onto the stage with harmony. The audience was full. She could hear the rustle of programs, quiet conversations, the creak of seats as people settled in to watch. And she could sense something else. Skepticism, curiosity, people wondering how the blind girl would manage. The first round required playing a complete Chopin ballade and 2 etudes. Lily had chosen Ballade No. 1 in G minor and 2 of the most technically demanding etudes in the repertoire. They were pieces that would prove her technical skill beyond any doubt. She sat at the piano, took a deep breath, and began. The opening of the ballade is gentle, almost questioning. Lily played it with delicate precision, her fingers barely touching the keys. Then, as the piece built in intensity, she let her whole body engage with the music. Her shoulders swayed, her head tilted. She wasn't just playing notes. She was living the story that Chopin had written into the music. When she finished the ballade, there was a moment of silence. Then applause. Not polite applause, real enthusiastic applause. She could hear people shifting forward in their seats, could sense the change in the room's energy. The 2 etudes were even more challenging. They required rapid fingerwork, precise jumps across the keyboard, perfect coordination between both hands. But Lily's fingers knew exactly where to go. Her thousands of hours of practice had built a map in her mind. She didn't need to see the keys. She could feel them. When the last note faded, the applause was even stronger. Lily stood, gave a small bow, and walked off stage with harmony. Her legs felt weak. Her hands were trembling, but she had done it. She had made it through the first round. Backstage, Valdez grabbed her in a tight hug. "Perfect," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "You are absolutely perfect." Over the next week, Lily advanced through each round. The second round, then the third. Each time she had to learn new pieces, memorize them quickly, and perform them flawlessly. The competition was grueling. Some nights she got only 3 or 4 hours of sleep, spending the rest of the time at the piano, drilling the new music into her memory. The other competitors were kind to her mostly. Some went out of their way to help, warning her about steps or obstacles backstage. Others kept their distance, perhaps uncomfortable or unsure how to interact with her. A few were openly competitive, barely acknowledging her presence. But the audiences loved her. With each performance, the applause grew louder. People started waiting outside the stage door, asking for autographs. Reporters requested interviews. The story of the blind pianist competing at the Tchaikovsky competition was spreading. Not everyone was pleased. Lily overheard conversations she wasn't meant to hear. Judges discussing whether her participation was appropriate. Other musicians questioning whether she had an unfair advantage because people felt sympathetic. Critics wondering if the competition was becoming a circus instead of a serious musical event.
Ignore them, Valdez told her firmly.
You are here because you earned it. You are advancing because you are playing brilliantly. Nothing else matters. The final round was the most challenging of all. The remaining 6 competitors had to perform a complete piano concerto with the Moscow Philharmonic Orchestra. This wasn't just about solo playing anymore. It was about coordination, about working with dozens of other musicians, about feeling the flow of the music and staying perfectly in sync. Lily chose the same piece she had played at her first masterclass with Valdez. Rachmaninoff's Piano Concerto No. 2. It felt right. This piece had started her journey. Now it would complete it. But performing a concerto while blind presented unique challenges. She couldn't see the conductor. She couldn't watch for cues. She had to rely entirely on her ears, on her internal sense of timing, on her ability to feel the music's pulse. The orchestra was nervous at first. During rehearsals, they weren't sure how to work with her. The conductor, a stern woman named Katerina, was skeptical. "How will you know when to come in?" Katerina asked during their first rehearsal. "How will you follow tempo changes?" "Let me try," Lily said simply. They ran through the concerto once. Lily listened carefully to everything. The sound of Katerina's breathing, the way the violins moved before a tempo change, the subtle shift in the room's acoustics when the brass section prepared to play. She absorbed it all, building a mental map of the piece that didn't require sight. By the second rehearsal, Katerina's skepticism had vanished. "Your timing is better than most sighted soloists," she admitted. "You listen more carefully. You anticipate better. This is remarkable." The final performance was scheduled for a Saturday evening. The concert hall was packed beyond capacity. People were standing in the aisles. Camera crews from news stations around the world had set up their equipment. This wasn't just a music competition anymore. It had become an event. Backstage, Lily could hear the buzz of excitement. She tried to stay calm, tried to focus on the music, but her nerves were overwhelming. This was it. Everything she had worked for. Everything she had sacrificed. Everything she had endured. It all came down to the next 33 minutes. Valdez squeezed her hand. "Remember why you play," he said softly. "Not for the judges. Not for the audience. Not even for yourself. You play because music is truth, and truth deserves to be heard. Go out there and tell them the truth." Lily nodded. She stood up, straightened her dress, and took Harmony's harness. Together they walked toward the stage. The crowd's murmur grew louder as she appeared. She heard gasps, whispers, a few scattered claps. She walked to the piano and sat down. The orchestra was already in position. Katerina stood at the conductor's podium. The hall grew quiet. Thousands of people holding their breath, waiting. Katerina raised her baton. The orchestra prepared. And then, the music began. The opening chords of Rachmaninoff's Piano Concerto No. 2 floated through the concert hall like a prayer. Soft, gentle, almost fragile, Lily's fingers touched the keys with perfect lightness, coaxing out each note as if it were made of glass. She could feel the orchestra behind her, their instruments breathing with hers. The strings swelled. The horns added depth. And through it all, Lily's piano wove the melody that had captivated audiences for over a century. This piece meant everything to her. It was the music she had played when Valdez first heard her. It was the piece that had changed her life. Now in this moment, on this stage, she poured every ounce of emotion she had ever felt into those keys. The first movement built slowly, gaining power and momentum. Lily's hands flew across the keyboard, executing impossibly complex runs and arpeggios. Her fingers moved so fast they seemed to blur. Yet every note was perfect. Every phrase had meaning. Every dynamic shift told part of the story. She swayed with the music, her whole body engaged. She wasn't thinking about technique anymore. She wasn't worried about the judges or the audience or the cameras. She had become the music itself. There was no separation between Lily and the piano, between the notes on the page and the sounds filling the hall. The famous romantic melody of the second movement began, and Lily felt tears prick at her eyes. This was the part that always made her emotional. The sweeping strings, the gentle piano, the way the music seemed to speak of love and loss and hope all at once. She played it with her whole heart, letting every feeling she had ever experienced flow through her fingertips. In the audience, people were wiping their eyes. Even some of the judges, stern and professional, found themselves moved in ways they hadn't expected. This wasn't just technical mastery. This was something deeper, something that touched the soul. The third movement arrived with thundering power. The tempo increased. The music became urgent, almost desperate. Lily's fingers pounded the keys with controlled force, creating cascades of sound that seemed to shake the very walls of the concert hall. The orchestra matched her intensity, building to a climax that left everyone breathless, and then the final chords. Powerful, triumphant, definitive. Lily struck them with absolute confidence, letting them ring out into the space. The last note faded slowly, the vibrations dying away until there was complete silence. For a moment, nobody moved. The silence stretched on for what felt like an eternity. Lily sat at the piano, her hands still resting on the keys, her chest heaving from the exertion. Then the applause began. It started with one person, then another, then suddenly the entire hall erupted. People jumped to their feet. The sound was deafening. Lily could hear people shouting, cheering, crying. The applause went on, washing over her in waves. She stood up, slightly dizzy, and bowed. The applause grew even louder. People were standing on their chairs now, waving programs, throwing flowers onto the stage. Katerina, the conductor, walked over and embraced her. The orchestra members were tapping their bows against their music stands, the traditional way musicians applaud one of their own. Backstage, Valdez was waiting with tears streaming down his face. He grabbed Lily in a bear hug and said nothing. There were no words for what they had just witnessed. How long did they applaud? Lily asked when she could finally speak. 11 minutes, Valdez said, his voice breaking. 11 minutes. I have never seen anything like it in my entire career. The other finalists came over to congratulate her. Even those who had been competitive before seemed genuinely moved by what she had accomplished. One pianist, a young man from Japan, told her through an interpreter, "You didn't just play beautifully. You reminded all of us why we love music." But the competition wasn't over yet. There were still 2 more performances that evening, and then the judges would deliberate. The results wouldn't be announced until the next day. Lily tried to stay calm, but her mind was racing. Had she done enough? Had she proven herself? Or would the judges find some reason to mark her down? That night she couldn't sleep at all. She lay in bed replaying every moment of the performance in her mind, wondering if she had made any mistakes, if there was anything she could have done better. The next morning arrived gray and cloudy. The award ceremony was scheduled for noon at the concert hall. Lily dressed carefully, her hands shaking as she buttoned her blouse. Valdez was unusually quiet during breakfast, which made her even more nervous. The concert hall was packed again. All 48 competitors sat in the front rows along with their teachers and families. The judges filed onto the stage and took their seats at a long table. The head judge, an elderly woman named Dr. Volkov, who had been a famous pianist herself decades ago, stood at the microphone. "This has been an extraordinary competition," Dr. Volkov began in heavily accented English. "The talent we have witnessed over these past 2 weeks has been exceptional. Making our decisions was not easy." She went on to talk about the history of the competition, about its importance in the classical music world, about the careers it had launched. Lily barely heard any of it. Her heart was pounding so loudly she was sure everyone around her could hear it. Finally, Dr. Volkov began announcing the winners. 3rd place. 2nd place. Each time there was applause and the winner walked onto the stage to receive their medal and certificate. Then Dr. Volkov paused. She looked out at the audience and her stern face softened into something that might have been a smile. "Before I announce 1st place," she said, "I want to say something. I have been judging this competition for 30 years. I have heard thousands of performances. I have witnessed extraordinary talent. But yesterday evening, I heard something that challenged everything I thought I knew about music, about performance, about what is possible." Lily's breath caught in her throat. "1st place," Dr. Volkov continued, her voice growing stronger, "goes to Lily Chen." The hall exploded with noise. People were screaming, applauding, stomping their feet. Lily sat frozen in her seat, unable to process what she had just heard. Valdez grabbed her hand and pulled her to her feet. "You did it," he said, laughing and crying at the same time. "You won. You actually won." Harmony led Lily onto the stage. Her legs felt like they might give out at any moment. Dr. Volkov met her at the center and placed a heavy medal around her neck. Then the older woman leaned close and whispered something only Lily could hear. "You have not just won a competition, my dear. You have changed what people believe is possible. Thank you for that." But Dr. Volkov wasn't finished. She returned to the microphone. "There is more," she announced. "The judges have made an unprecedented decision. For the first time in the 63-year history of this competition, we are awarding a perfect score. Every judge gave Ms. Chen the highest possible marks in every category. Her performance was quite simply flawless. The applause somehow grew even louder. Lily felt tears streaming down her face. A perfect score. Nobody had ever achieved that in the history of the competition. Not once in 63 years. The next few hours were a blur. Reporters surrounded her asking questions. Camera flashes went off constantly. Representatives from concert halls and recording companies pressed business cards into her hand, begging for the chance to work with her. One journalist asked her, "How does it feel to be the first blind person to win the Tchaikovsky competition?" Lily thought for a moment before answering. "I don't think of myself as a blind pianist," she said slowly. "I think of myself as a pianist who happens to be blind. My blindness is part of who I am, but it's not all that I am. Music doesn't require sight. It requires passion, dedication, and the willingness to connect with something deeper than what our eyes can see." Within weeks, offers poured in from around the world. Concert halls in London, New York, Tokyo, Sydney. Recording contracts. Television appearances. Magazine covers. Lily accepted what felt right and declined the rest. She didn't want to become a celebrity. She wanted to be a musician. Antonio Valdez became her manager, fiercely protecting her from exploitation while helping her build a genuine career. Together, they made sure she had the accommodations she needed while refusing to let anyone treat her as anything less than the world-class artist she had become. Her first album was released 6 months after the competition. It featured the Rachmaninoff Concerto along with several solo pieces. The album received rave reviews and won multiple awards. Critics who had once dismissed her now praised her artistry without qualification. But perhaps the most meaningful moment came a year after the competition. Lily received a letter from a 13-year-old boy in California. He was losing his sight to the same condition Lily had, and his parents had shown him videos of her performances. "I thought my life was over," the boy wrote in Braille. "I thought I would have to give up music. But then I saw you play and I realized that's not true. You showed me that blind people can do anything. Thank you for not giving up. Because you didn't give up, now I won't either." Lily kept that letter in her piano bench. On difficult days, when the pressure felt too heavy or the challenges too great, she would take it out and run her fingers over the raised dots. She would remember why she had fought so hard, why she had refused to accept other people's limitations, and she would return to the piano and play, because that's what she was meant to do, not in spite of being blind, but simply because she was a musician, and musicians make music. That was the truth she had proven to the world. That was the legacy she would leave behind.